This is Untapped with ME, and I am ME. And on this podcast, I like to do my two favorite things, which are to tell true and crazy stories about me and life in Nacogdoches, Texas, and drink beer. Yes, delicious beer. Let's get started. Tonight, we are drinking something called Art Car. Art Car. It is brewed by Sierra Nevada, and it has notes of mango and apricot. I'm thinking that some of you out there who don't like IPAs will like this one. Art Car. I love how beers have fun names now. I'd like to be in an art car, huh? All right. Woohoo! Let's get to our story. The bear blew him away, part of our series called Murder and Crime in Nacogdoches, Texas. Last time, we were talking about the neighbor who saw what he thought was a bear running around Mr. Box's property. But it really was just Kenneth Palafox running around his father-in-law's property, yes, looking like a bear, running free, untamed. And this is really an appropriate image for Kenneth in that he was like a bear, so free, so uncontrollable, and yet so protective. And we talked about Ken telling one or more people that he was going to blow Mr. Box's it away. He had said to his friend that he was going to get Mr. Box for what he had done. Now, what he had done, if you'll recall, is he had taken his Karen from him. And so, Mr. Box is, in fact, now dead. And Ken is in jail. But not for murder, y'all. The police are out there looking for the suspect. They think that he is a black man with an afro who smokes pot. But now they do know. Now they know that Ken murdered Mr. Box. Yeah. Here is Ken's confession. When Mr. Box hears that knock on his door at 10 p.m., Kenneth and Melendez are waiting on the other side. Ken has that Ruger 22 pistol in his pocket, and Melendez has a Ruger 22 rifle in hand. Kenneth says that they are there to ask Mr. Box if they can target shoot on his land at 10 p.m. in the dark. Whether that was said or not, Mr. Box is pretty quick to have that box of cartridges and a 22 Remington shotgun at the door. He wants those boys off his property. They are leaving, but the sound of those bullets falling into the chamber of Box's rifle, well, they trigger something in Kenneth. Something from the war. He spins around and he rushes the old man. He does a roundhouse kick to knock the rifle out of his hand. He learned to do that in the Marines. He pulls out that Ruger pistol and he pushes Mr. Box into the house, through the living room, and into his bedroom. And all the while, you know the old man is probably yelling what he would be doing to Ken when he got free. But he's not going to get free. That's when Ken and Melendez tie him up with what was the closest thing that they could find. The man's own neckties. They tie his hands, they tie his feet tight. They roll him over on his stomach, and then Ken walks to the other side of the bed. Ken says, he knew I was going to shoot him. He shoots him 7 times. 7 bullet casings on the floor and at least 4 shots to the back of Mr. Box's head. And then Ken and Melendez go outside and they smoke a joint. It's all such terrible, crazy poo-poo. Did they go out there to shoot Mr. Box? Ken's friend Pelican says that at the party at Hillcrest around 9 p.m. before he left for Melrose, he said he was going to blow Mr. Box's it away. But they had not thought through much for 2 people who have made a plan, okay? Why tie him up? And if you planned to tie him up, why not bring something then to tie him up with? And then they have all those impromptu thoughts about how to cover it up. Melendez suggests that they make it look like a robbery. So they steal some things. And then Ken gets an idea. He finds an old Afro comb in the back of his car. He throws that pick, that's what we called it back then, a pick, he throws that into a guest bedroom. So now police will be looking for someone black. I will tell you soon just how significant that one Afro comb is to the fate of Kenneth Palafox. The trial of Kenneth Palafox lasts 2 weeks in Nacogdoches in February of 1976. 2 weeks and he will know if he will live or die. You see, the grand jury has indicted him for capital punishment. In Texas, if you murder someone in the course of a robbery, it is a capital offense. And that means you will get capital punishment. And that is only one of 2 things, friends. Life imprisonment or the death penalty. In 1977, death would mean a seat in the electric chair. District Attorney David Adams has that confession. He's going to enter it as evidence where Ken describes taking all that stuff and hiding it at his girlfriend's apartment. He certainly makes clear that he did rob Mr. Box. Adams is so glad to have all that detail in the confession. For now. Later, not so much. The Palafox siblings are excruciatingly distressed. They are successful and beautiful and educated. They are class favorites, the life of the party, great friends to others. They are wretchedly sad. They love their brother. Cecile is there in court. That is her boy. What a tragic figure she must have been. Everyone loved Mrs. Palafox. As one friend said, she was beautiful inside and out. The jury begins the trial of Kenneth Julian Palafox at the local Sheraton Inn. Yeah, these 6 men and 6 women are stuck with each other for the duration of the trial. For 2 weeks, they will eat together and travel back and forth to the courthouse together. They cannot talk to friends. They cannot talk to family. They cannot watch television. It is only the second trial where the jury is sequestered in Nacogdoches County in the history of Nacogdoches County. And the first jury to be sequestered outside of the courthouse. Again, this is the first jury to be sequestered outside of the courthouse. Say what? Yeah, so here's the thing. The first jury to ever be sequestered in Nacogdoches is the jury for the murder trial of Edward Otho Higgins in 1961. We covered the murder for Edward Otho Higgins' trial in our first story called The Cat Ate Her Face. So go back and watch that, okay, y'all? That jury slept in the courthouse. It's true. The courthouse kept 12 cots there in the jury room for years. Now that really is some crazy poo-poo. So this jury is at a hotel. But they are really stressed, y'all. just from the get-go. The foreman of that jury, Dr. Leon Hartman, a professor at the local university, told me personally that it was a very tense trial. There was the confinement and talk of neckties and the young, handsome man before them and his beautiful mother behind him. It was a lot. Dr. Hartman says, and Judge Pierce strictly ruled that case. He did not put up with any foolishness. It was just so much for those jurors. So, when juror John Durfus asked the bailiff for a bottle of whiskey, well, he got it, y'all. Yeah, he got it. About a week in, Judge Pierce tries to put together an outing for those jurors. Little more art car, thank you. So he had this idea. See, they could not be separated by law. So altogether, these 12 strangers piled into 3 patrol cars driven by 3 deputies who slowly made the loop around Nacogdoches, bumper to bumper, lights flashing, radios buzzing, communication between them. And so they drove around the loop and back to their hotel. That was their outing. 20 awkward minutes in a car with people you do not know. And then the next day, they are back to talk of blowing a man away. The first thing that jury did was have a pre-trial to determine if Kenneth Palafox is sane and competent to stand trial. You see, you cannot execute a person who is insane. So death won't even be an option if Kenneth can be determined insane. You would think that would be easy. The man had been institutionalized on 3 separate occasions between the years of 1972 and 1974. He practically lived at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Houston for 2 years. In all, Kenneth is institutionalized for 613 days. What is wrong with Kenneth? The doctors there diagnose him with schizophrenia, with a tendency for periodic explosiveness. But another doctor does not agree. This is the doctor who examines Kenneth for the pretrial sanity hearing. Dr. J.A. Hunter, a psychiatrist for the maximum security unit of the Rusk State Hospital, testifies that Kenneth Palafox, upon examination just weeks before trial, is tense, nervous, with poorly controlled hostility, but sane. Sane now, sane at the time of the murder. Dr. Hunter says Ken knew right from wrong. Now, the jury can accept that opinion or they can reject it. They spend 3.5 hours deliberating just that, and they decide he is sane. Not good news for the defense, y'all. It is January 1976. Kenneth pleads not guilty. He never wavers from saying that he is guilty of murder, but he asserts that he is not guilty of the charge. The charge is capital murder. He did not murder in the course of a robbery, he contends. His life depends on establishing that as fact. There are 35 witnesses. One of them is Karen. Now remember, that's not her real name. She is the former Mrs. Kenneth Palafox and the daughter of the deceased. She is working at a nightclub in Houston now. And one of them is Reba Charles Box, widow of the deceased. She testifies to how she and her husband did not approve of the marriage. She tells them about the divorce, Ken's suicide, stolen items, and the last conversations with her husband. The prosecutor closes in less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes. But Harvard-educated, court-appointed Tom P. Sims takes all morning to close for the defense. The jury takes less than an hour to deliberate. There is an interesting item to note about that short deliberation. Dr. Hartman, the jury foreman, sends a message to Judge Pierce that the jury needs something. They want to review the testimony of the two friends who were at the last party at the Hillcrest Apartments. They want to hear, among other things, how Ken's friend Stilly said that Kenneth pressed him about something. He wanted to know, Kenneth, if Stilly knew where he could steal some stuff and make some money. Well, now that would be a good cover for why Ken might suddenly need to sell all that stuff hidden in his girlfriend's apartment at the time. Then Dr. Hartman sends another note to the judge. The jury wants to know what is meant by in the course of, as in this law. Under Texas statutes, a murder is a capital offense if the offender intentionally commits the murder in the course of committing or attempting to commit a robbery. The jury is obviously trying to decide if Kenneth went out there to Melrose for the purpose of robbing Mr. Box. Because if he did, and he killed Mr. Box incidental to the robbery, just because Mr. Box happened to catch them at it, then this is a capital offense. Then that jury has to decide whether the punishment is life or death. So, what does the jury decide? Kenneth must rise to hear the verdict. His mother, Cecile, stands with him. The verdict is guilty of capital punishment. Mr. Box's youngest son exclaims, "God bless the jury!" He couldn't help himself. Judge Pierce firmly, in that low, gravelly voice, cautions that there will be none of that. Kenneth remains stoic. He turns to comfort his mother. She flees the courtroom as the sentence is pronounced. Death in the electric chair. But all capital murder trials have an immediate appeal with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. If someone is to die, the state better review that case, right? To be sure that the trial was fair. And y'all, Kenneth's case was not. The Court of Criminal Appeals rules in Kenneth's favor. They do. It is only too evident that the objective of Melendez and Kenneth is not robbery. Kenneth says so in his confession. He says, "We didn't particularly want any of this stuff, but we wanted it to look like a burglary." The murder was done and over before they stole anything. This is where that Afro comb is so important. That alone tells you that they were trying to create the illusion of a robbery. If the state had kept that confession out of the case, then things would have been so different. What Kenneth said in the confession is exculpatory. Exculpatory. That means that what he said clears him of the charge, which was capital murder. It does not clear him of the murder, obviously. It just means he should be tried for a non-capital murder. One where an option for punishment is not death. So, in 1979, the case is reversed by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. Wow. Kenneth Palafox must be given a new trial in Nacogdoches. Crazy poo-poo. District Attorney David Adams wanted that confession admitted to seal the coffin for Kenneth, but if it is admitted into evidence, he has to refute those exculpatory statements, but he does not. So, instead of that confession locking Kenneth down, it just may have set him free, y'all. How happy Ken's family must have been. How relieved Cecile must have felt. No matter what, Ken is not going to be executed. He is going to live. And with that, Judge Pierce's record is broken. None of his cases since 1963, when he was first appointed to the bench, have ever been reversed. None! Until now. Kenneth Palafox has one of the most amazing reprieves in the history of Nacogdoches. But the new trial for Kenneth Palafox is not happening very fast. In 1980, Ken is getting impatient. He writes to Judge Jack Pierce inquiring about his bench warrant. That is, when is he going to be arrested and taken from prison to Nacogdoches County Courthouse for his retrial? He writes, "Judge, I'm not too educated, and I do not have any money, nor do I have an attorney to my knowledge. That's my problem. I also don't know how to get legal help. Could I be brought back off death row? Please, soon. Thank you." At the bottom he writes, SOS. The new district attorney, Herbert Hancock, is not about to retry Kenneth Palafox and have all that bad press about the state's errors in the first trial. No way. If Kenneth will plead guilty to non-capital murder and waive his right to a trial, the state will only seek 50 years. In addition, they will give him credit for time served awaiting this trial. And that goes all the way back to that first day in the Nacogdoches County Jail. In the end, given all the state prison protocol, because the state is not eager to house all these prisoners, Kenneth is expecting to be free in as soon as 6 months, y'all. Not long after that good news, in April 1981, Kenneth sees his sister-in-law walking to her car on the courthouse parking lot from his cell window on the second story of the courthouse. He leans out and he calls to her, "I'll be out in 6 months. I have a new life. I love you, and I'll see you soon." Those were the last words that she would ever hear him say. Just weeks later, Kenneth Palafox is found unresponsive in his prison cell. It appears that he has taken the sheets from his cell bed, twisted them into a noose, and hung himself. But he is not dead. They send him to Galveston, where he languishes for 3 months. He dies in July. Now, why would a man do that so close to his release? It does not make any sense. One person close to the family does not believe that it was suicide. The marks on his neck are too far down. They should have been at his chin. But Ken's brother Danny, not his real name, makes peace with it. He thinks that Kenneth has been dead since 1976. That is when he was first condemned. He says, "In the end, Ken took his life in prison. I spoke to him before at the county and begged him to stop. But he wanted to die. An eye for an eye." Kenneth was that bear. Wild, untamed, restless. But he told the truth about what he did, and he deeply regretted it. Could it be that he regretted it so much that he would deny himself freedom? Or did someone want to be sure that Kenneth Palafox did not get a second chance? Whew. Oh, it could have all been so different. Yep. His accomplice, Dean Melandis. Let's talk about what happened to him. He gets life, and he gets out. He moves to California, marries, and works as a mechanic. He had work and a woman and a pretty full life before he died in 2018. That could have been Kenneth. It has been 48 years, y'all, since that cool night in Melrose when Mr. Box answered the door and the end of his life began. But for the families of Kenneth and Mr. Box, the agony and anxiety of this story is an open wound that they bear every day. For them, there is no reprieve. None, ever. Mr. Box's youngest son is in his late 70s now, and he is still actively trying to sort out exactly what happened. He says that Mr. Box was an honorable man and the best father he could ever have. The Palafoxes remain traumatized. Their brother was their hero. Whew. My telling this story has really upset some people. I have been threatened. I have received angry messages. I have been afraid. But this story is part of the history of our little town, and certainly the history of my little world, because my daddy is the judge who tried this case twice. Next time, we will share our bonus edition, an interview with Jerry Poole, court reporter. He was there, y'all. So subscribe and follow now and tap in to Untapped with ME.